Hey guys, my name is Loveless, and this time we're back with Quirk Knife, Chapter 41. It's been a while since I've actually posted. Not as long as the last time I did a hiatus, but still kind of long. So let's get straight into it. Well, that did not go as expected. Nezu rubbed his face with his paws, pointedly avoiding Aizawa's scowl. Izuku still latched on around his torso with sleepy sniffles and a weak hold. I should have seen this coming, Tsukachi mumbled. I made the mistake of thinking Bakugo's family in its entirely cared for the boy like a son. Judging by the words they used with me and my fellow officers, now I see my mistake. Kids can be cruel, and Izuku here was a small quirkless kid. He would have been an easy target in the past by those who see themselves as superior. Maybe Izuku shouldn't attend school, Yamada whispered. We could put him online where he wouldn't have to interact with people and... But does that sound healthy to you? Shizenji interrupted. Is isolation the true answer? No, you misunderstood me. I mean for now. And he'll still interact with all of us and his friends, those he felt comfortable with. No, Tsukachi sighed. Look, I'll be first to admit that I'm not proud how I initially handled this case. I didn't see the extent of the boy's trauma and history, although I should have had an idea based on his quirkless status. This is my fault, and I'll take full responsibility for that. Yet I can't let you guys disobey the contract that was written. Aizawa perked up. The contract states that Izuku Midoriya, Himiko Toga, and Toya Todoroki must be under full supervision by Hiro in the presence of Aizawa household and UA, both, not one or the other. Official individuals, supervisors are as followed. Nezu, Recovery Girl, Eraserhead, Present Mike, Mirako, Hawk, Midnight, All Might, and Ingenium. Aizawa rolled his eyes and adjusted his hold around Izuku. Whatever, maybe then tossing him into a normal school schedule shouldn't be an option. He can easily benefit by receiving his education with Nezu along with Toya and Toga. Also physical training with Hawks and Mirako. Why does Izuku have to be the only one thrown into a classroom with strangers? First off, Izuku has Shinso close to him at all hours of the school day, Tsukachi said. That's the main reason he was permitted to enter the classroom. Toga and Todoroki often provoke his actions, encouraging him and joining him. But Shinso has a level head and a clear line of morality. He knows right from wrong, unlike the other two. Plus, you know the stakes. If Izuku is unable to function in a normal atmosphere, he will be taken away and isolated into a mental... Shinto's just a kid, Aizawa snapped. How's he supposed to hold back Izuku? You saw how he handled the situation. Tsukachi raised his voice. The boy made intelligent decisions amongst the chaos. He disarmed Izuku without putting himself in danger, evacuated the classroom, and sent a reliable friend down to get attention of the teachers, and even located a safe space for them all to wait with the third years. He is the one of the only people I can count on to keep Izuku in check. What would Shinso be able to do if Izuku managed to seriously injure not only himself but others? Aizawa shouted in return. Would you expect him to hold that guilt over his head? The guilt of knowing he was supposed to be able to stop Izuku? Is that what you're telling me? Tsukachi opened his mouth to respond, but Aizawa cut him off. This school is meant for heroes in training. The type of pressure you're putting on all my kids is getting out of hand. We should be focusing on fixing their fucking mental health before trying to... What? What's the goal here? Make them normal? My kids aren't normal, so get over it. Get the fuck over it. They are not going to magically get better if you put them in what you consider normal atmosphere. Alright? We can't even scrape the surface of all their problems. He's right, Yagi spoke quietly. I may not have a good read on children, yet alone teenagers,
But even I can sense the newfound tension in the classroom during training. It isn't affecting their efforts per se, but I'm concerned about the classroom's dynamic. I'm inclined to believe it's based on the situation tied into a recent one as well. Shut up, moron, Aizawa, Nezu warned. If you need to step out for some fresh air, please allow yourself to do so. Yagi, I'm curious about what else you have to say. What have you observed? Nezu watched Aizawa for a moment longer, the man holding himself onto the sleeping child like a lifeline as the other was holding onto Yamada's elbow as he was physically struggling to contain himself. It's the tension between the kids in general. I thought at first perhaps Shinto and Bakugo had simply had strong personalities that clashed and caused arguments. But now I see that Shinso must have known more about Midoriya's past than he let on. Then there's Shinso and the young Todoroki. Their feud is more silent, much stranger. It seems very one sided. Todoroki is very cold towards Shinso, although Shinso rarely reciprocates those emotions. Nezu nodded. And when he does, Shinso will get more aggressive towards Todoroki. But it hasn't gotten physical yet. Mainly Shinso getting in his face and trying to provoke him. And he's actually often succeeds in getting a reaction from the passive boy. Yagi explains, eyes constantly drifting over to Izuku to make sure he was asleep. Nezu knew the man was probably concerned about Izuku finding the truth. But Nezu knew from the beginning, somehow, Izuku knows. The expression on his face when he first stepped into the office was a dead giveaway. Is it just those three? Yamada asked. No, not all. The tension between Bakugo and Kirishima is becoming thicker. It was easier to notice. Kirishima used to hang off of the other like an excited puppy, but now he's become more silent, less happy. And Ashido yells at anyone who ticks her off in the slightest. And that seems to stress out Kaminari, Yaoyorozu, Koda, and Aoyama. Ida is on the edge of losing control, which is then affecting his friends Yudaraka and Tsuyu. It's a mess, in all honesty. Aizawa flattened the top of Izuku's curls and thinned his eyes. I guess you're more observant than I thought. Yagi didn't respond, instead lowering his head as Nezu groaned. This is becoming more difficult. I think I took the wrong approach here. I think we need to introduce the mess slowly, starting with the Todorokis. This is a puzzle after all. Are you sure? Shuzenji cringed. I had a talk with Toga. It's safe to say that Toya is very anti-Endeavor. The siblings? Nezu corrected himself. But I need some opinions. I plan to introduce the two eldest with Toya, but I'm struggling with the youngest. Izuku stirred, and all eyes turned to the boy, his head's rising slowly before nuzzling himself against Aizawa, muttering about being cold. What do you think? Aizawa asked gently. Izuku looking back up with a confused face. What? If we get all the Todorokis together, should we just do it with the three older ones, or Shota as well? Izuku scratched his head and refused to turn to meet the rest of the room. If I put myself in Shota's place, I would want to be included. Because if I wasn't, I would assume everyone thought I was too weak to handle this situation. I would feel left out. Shota is just as much a brother than the others, no more, no less. Including him. Trust me, no matter the age, Shota is Toya's brother. That all is to it. Nezu tilted his head and smiled slowly, whispering under his breath. You never cease to amaze me. Aizawa nodded. So, there's your answer. Hawks should go too. Izuku mumbled. He and Todoroki spent a lot of time together as kids. Hawks deserves the full truth as well. Tomorrow then.
Nezu nodded. All in one room, after school. I'll contact the others. We need to do this. Let me deal with the Bakugos, Aizawa said dangerously. I can. Alright. Nezu cut him off. But you'll bring Yamada and Kayama with you. Remember that you are an adult. Don't make choices you'll regret later on. Izuku is welcome to stay here with me, and you can bring him to Miko's apartment tomorrow. Allow him to take the day off because I believe Mirako is off duty tomorrow as well. I don't think he wants to spend more time at school right now, so I'll leave him with Mirako. Aizawa said, he'll probably just sleep the entire day anyway. Nezu drew a breath and leaned back. Let's do this. Hi, Munchkin. Remy listened as the door shut behind Eraser and Mike, Izuku standing nervously at the entrance of her apartment. It's nice to have another shorty around. Makes me feel taller. Even though, yeah, he still had about 2 inches on her. She had more muscle, though. Hi, Mirako. I said you can call me Rumi. Izuku shrunk in on himself a little bit. Rumi internally cursed herself for being so loud as she cringed a little. Come on in. We get to spend the whole day together. Isn't that cool? Izuku kicked off his little slippers he wore over, still dressed in what seemed to be his pajamas, as he waddled over to the couch and slumping down, curling on his side with a blank face. Rumi knew he didn't have the emotional range to try speaking about what happened yesterday, no matter how curious she was, so she knew to keep her mouth shut. Did you eat breakfast yet, Munchkin? She called from the kitchen, her ears twitching, waiting for a response. It never came. With a silent sigh, Rumi worked around the kitchen, gathering together what she thought a kid would like. She stood in the middle of her madness and scratching behind her ear, trying to recall what she would have asked if she was a kid. She always ate whatever was provided to her on a plate. She had never been picky. Izuku, on the other hand, that tiny bastard, had very specific taste palette. Rumi ended up using Google to follow a recipe, whipping eggs, soaking some bread in it, then toasting the bread in a frying pan with cinnamon and sugar. It smelled so good that it was promising, right? With a side of syrup and cut up fruit, Rumi wandered over and crouched down in front of the kid, her tired eyes almost staring right through her. It was scary, in all honesty. I made food. She spoke quietly, waving the plate by Izuku's nose until his tiny freckles had twitched, green eyes finally wandering down to the plate. He looked back to meet her eyes. What is that? It's called French toast. Rumi moved back slightly as Izuku sat up, crossing his legs under him and accepting the plate carefully, placing it on his lap. Rumi went back to her own plate and sat next to the kid, turning the television on, watching him in the corner of her eye. His fingers pushed the food around until he ripped a piece off and dunked it in the syrup. Something Rumi only had in her cabinet because Mike's insistence of trying North American food. Despite the sugary and sticky mess in the kitchen, it was all worth it to see Izuku's eyes widen slightly as he looked down at the plate and eating the 2 slices in its entirety with a small smile. So, Rumi hummed once the dishes were organized in the dishwasher. How you been doing? Izuku glared at her with a dead expression to answer her question, the corner of his mouth pulled down in a slight frown. Of course, Hawks, Toya, and Shinto already filled her on what happened. But Izuku didn't know that yet, so Rumi asked, "What's giving you a frown like that?" Izuku looked down at his socks and wiggled his toes, fists balling up in his sweatpants around his knees before offering a single shrug. I don't know. You don't know? Come on, tell me. Maybe I can help you or something. Izuku rolled his head back and forward in a pensive motion before sighing dramatically. I had a really bad freak out. A freak out? Rumi played along with the clueless act. I freak out sometimes too.
got a shrink? They usually know how to help. No, no, not a freak out like that. I I mean a really bad one. Izuku leaned over and whispered something like they might be overheard in otherwise an empty apartment. I tried to get a guy to slit my throat. Rumi's eyes widened because no, she was not informed about that part. She was told that Izuku had some type of manic breakdown when he spoke to his most likely child abuser and had disassociated, not that he tried to. I put a knife in his hand, forcing him to bring the blade to my neck, and told him to kill me. I think I don't remember all of it. Rumi turned and kneeled on the couch to properly face Izuku, now noticing the little pink band-aid on the front of his neck, in the middle of a blotchy scar. Why? Is all Rumi could choke out, suddenly regretting tossing herself into the conversation without any knowledge. How the fuck do you comfort suicidal kids? I don't know, Izuku answered quietly as his face paled flood of pink tint. Don't know. Rumi pinched her lips to lean back. You still want this person to kill you? What? No. I never want him to do that. He flailed his hands around his head like he was swatting flies, eyes looking around the room without pausing on a specific point. And do you know this person? Izuku paused, then gave a small nod. We used to be friends. That sounded more like a question. Well, he wasn't very nice to you, was he? Izuku looked away again, an unreadable expression. No. Rumi nodded in understanding and crossed her arms. How bad was it? A pause. Bad? Izuku kept his eyes on the floor until Rumi leaned over and ruffled his hair. Chin up, kid. You've already done the hardest part, then. What's that? You faced him. You faced him again. And came out alive. No? Barely. You're alive. I see you right in front of me. In fact, if I focus enough, I can hear your heartbeat. Ain't that something? Izuku looked back towards her. You can hear my heartbeat? It's faint, but there, just like mine. So, what you gonna do about this kid next time you see him? Izuku's eyes widened. Next time? Well, duh. What, you gonna let him win? Rumi cocked an eyebrow with a smirk, eyes boring into Izuku as he bit his bottom lip in debate, his scarred hands fidgeting with the faint fabric of his pants. How do I win? Rumi clapped her hands together and stood up. Then opened her arms with a dramatic flare. You live, of course. But you just said I'm alive. Izuku, Rumi drawled. What I mean is, don't let the bastard stop you from doing the fuck you want. Live your life the way you fucking wanna, not how others want you to. Do you want to become a hero? The boy sat up a little straighter and wiggled in his spot. I think so. I said, do you want to become a hero, Munchkin? Yes, I do. Then become a fucking hero. Don't let some little shit stop you. The best revenge is proving people wrong. You feel me? Izuku's eyes were wide in awe, staring up at Rumi like she personally hung the moon and stars in the night sky. Yes, I do. Rumi laughed loud and deep, while scooping Izuku up off the couch like he was a toddler, his feet dangling off the ground awkwardly as the shorter woman held him up by his armpits. That's the fire I was looking for, kid, but you still need a shrink. Let me give you some cards I've been collecting for Hawks. Rumi walked off to the front dresser by her door while she heard Izuku flipping through television channels, muttering quietly to himself. While stumbling over his words, she was curious about his speech. Toya said he never sounded like this until after the battle with the Nomu, and Recovery Girl said that there was no neurological damage. Pulling out her top 3 therapist cards, she paused and dug through the box for a phone number for a psychotherapist's office. Munchkin, she shouted, put on a movie or something. I can hear you flipping through every channel. Sorry, Izuku called back before there was silence, followed by the Netflix introduction sound. Rumi quickly punched the found number into her phone and raised it to her face. Hello? Yeah? Hi. Where can I find Directory of Speech Counseling? Did you do something fucking stupid? Shota glared at Natsuo when his siblings arrived at Nezu's office, Fumi punching Natsuo's arm, telling him to watch his tongue. Hi, Shoto. She hesitated. Principal Nezu, correct? That would be me. And the answer to your concerns, Todoroki here did nothing wrong. No need to panic. In fact, I've called you here to speak about a case I've been working on. Please, take a seat. Shota's eyes stayed on the floor as the other siblings sat on either side of him. Natsuo looking pissed as usual, and Fumi just tired and anxious. I apologize for our tardiness, by the way. Fumi smiled. We had a bit of trouble getting here. No, not at all. I know it's quite short notice, so I appreciate you two coming. I know Mr. Todoroki here was busy with university, and with your teaching and all, I'm sure it wasn't easy to find free time. Natsuo and Fumi looked at each other. How did you... As I said before, I've been working on a case that's presented to me that has much to do with your family. Tell me about Toya Todoroki. Shota stiffened as he felt a cold gust of air erupt from Natsuo. Pardon me? Toya Todoroki, the eldest of the twin of Fumi Todoroki. No? Bastard! Natsuo's shout was quickly slapped across the torso by Fumi. Nat, take a seat now. Don't embarrass yourself more than you already have. Do you understand me? Well, who the hell does this guy think he is getting off of asking us? Toya was my big brother. Shota deadpanned. He passed away when he was 17. I was 11, Natsuo was 14, Fumi was 17 as well. Shut up, Natsuo barked in Shoto's face. No one was fucking talking to you. No one ever talks to me. Shoto responded underneath his breath as Nezu's face seemed to grow more and more distressed. Do you all not get along? Never mind. Was there, and I'm sorry for sounding so insensitive, but a corpse? Natsuo stood and walked up to the window facing the sky as Fumi sighed. Was there a corpse? No, none was located. My father said that Toya must have taken his own life by, self-destruction with his quirk. I suppose there was no body to be found. Nezu nodded. Any proof of death? Well, do you fucking see him here? My father took care of everything. Why are you looking for our sibling's death now? It's almost been 5 years. Shoto's brows knitted together as Nezu's kind expression was completely gone. What do you know of the 3 vigilantes? Fumi frowned. Huh? Shoto picked his head up again. They were at the USJ protecting us. They seem to be familiar with Aizawa. I know Toga's the one with the blonde hair, as she attended one of our classes. There was another man I saw, but he had a big mask on. Then the small one, the little green one, came to our class yesterday. It did not go well. No, it didn't. Nezu agreed. But that's a whole separate topic. Anyhow, these three present me with several issues, one of which trying to get back to your family. Stuff's been going missing at the old man's workplace. Natsu stored it. It was assumed it was the vigilantes, except the idiot wanted to stop them himself instead of simply upgrading security. What an idiot. Is that the problem? Nezu shook his head. No, it isn't that easy. I know you're very intelligent, so understand my words. There was no body or proof of Toya Todoroki's death. The three Todoroki stared at Nezu with thinned eyes. Shoto's thoughts were going a mile a minute, trying to piece together the information he was provided. Enji Todoroki never filed for an investigation. Nezu continued. And I looked for a death certificate under the name Toya Todoroki. It does not exist. What are you trying to say? Fumi asked with a shaky tone. You can't, I must be misunderstanding, right? Shoto looked over to his sister, then over to Natsu, where his eyes were wide. Is this a cruel joke? Shoto didn't understand. His own eyes were wide in frustration that he couldn't piece together what they were being told. What's going on? I've grown to grow quite close to the three vigilantes. Nezu spoke softly. And the three are as close as can be. They are each other's family, which made me realize something. Family deserves to care for one another, no matter what. Izuku called all the three of you to be here, together. I initially was going to keep young Todoroki in the dark, but Izuku was the one who made me see things differently. Who's the third vigilante? Fumi asked urgently. Yeah, Shoto's eyes snapping down to where she grabbed the armrest of her seat with her knuckles were white. Please, tell me. Nezu only nodded and stood up. Exit my office and take a left. 6 doors down and it'll be on to your right. Room 416. I'm sorry I had to hold this off for so long, but Fumi and Natsuo dashed from the room, and naturally, Shoto followed the older siblings without a second thought. At home, it was unspoken when one sibling begins to run from something. The other must follow. It's a natural instinct at this point. Shoto's mind wasn't processing the information. He tried. He was tired and hungry, and really sad for some reason. Although there was no time on dwelling on that because Fumi was pounding her fist against the door. Shoto looked over for the first time and noticed his siblings were crying. What was he missing? Recovery Girl was the one to answer the door. After several tense moments of silence, Shoto unable to properly see what his siblings were crying about. Natsuo was first to break the silence. Toya? What? The older Todorokis were moving again, but Shoto couldn't. He couldn't. He can't. Gonna barf. No, you're not. I'm literally gonna fucking barf all over your stupid, cute little boots. Keigo, I swear I'm gonna... Okay, I get it. Stop talking about barf. Toya slumped across the table he was seated at while Keigo stared at him with worried eyes, flinching from him in the door every few seconds. They're gonna hate me, Toya whispered, turning his head to face the opposite direction and the blonde seated next to him. With a gust of wind, Keigo was upside down with his feathers and wings keeping him up. Nose to nose with Toya. I don't hate you. Toya flicked the man's nose and sat up, hands trembling violently as Recovery Girl gave him a pitiful smile. The three in the room jumping at the noise of a knock at the door. Don't answer it. Toya growled in panic as he gripped Keigo's thin arm. Dude, I'm actually gonna be sick. I'm not even kidding anymore. This would be very funny to anyone. if it weren't for the blood building up in Toya's lash lines and extremely shaky hands, face open for vulnerability and expressing nothing but fear. Hey, Keigo said firmly, you're okay. It's going to be okay. No, no, I. Keigo gripped Toya's shoulders with a dead serious face. I'm here. That will never, ever change. The door opened and Toya refused to look away from Keigo. Blue eyes on yellow as blood spilled over, trailing down his face, catching on any staple it could reach, dripping onto Keigo's jacket and hands, never backing out. Toya? The man in question turned his head. Slowly, it felt like he had activated some sort of a manipulation quirk. There, standing in the doorway, stood three figures, two of which were already openly crying. The third wasn't even visible enough. Toya choked out as Keigo squeezed his shoulders a little tighter for support, yellow eyes still glued to the side of the white-haired man's face. He could do this. He had to. I'm sorry. Fumi sobbed loudly as she pushed the door open wider and charged in, Natsuo stumbling after her with gray eyes wide in panic. Oh, Toya, is this... What's going on? Where... Fumi tripped over her words as she stood about an arm's length away from Toya, holding her hands out as if she wanted to touch him. But Natsuo didn't hesitate like her, instead sliding right over the table and slamming into Toya's body, causing them both to tumble to the ground loudly. Toy, what the fuck? Toya took one look at Keigo's smiling face before he released the breath that had been stuck in his chest, wrapping his arms around his brother and grabbing onto the back of his shirt. Hey, asshole. Fumi dropped onto her knees and grabbed onto both of her siblings, laughing weakly with them as her glasses fogged up with all the heavy breathing. Is it really you? What's all over your skin there? Toya pulled himself back and self-consciously rubbed at the darkened areas of his jaw. My burns got pretty bad, I guess. I tried adding some staples to make them look a little pretty. Did it work? Natsuo chuckled again. Toya, I don't understand. Where did you go? Why did you leave? Was it because Shoto? Shoto? Toya asked a little louder than he intended to. Why would I leave because of Shoto? Natsuo's frown deepened. Wait, what? No, I had to leave because the old man threatened to stop paying Mom's hospital bills, and he didn't want me around anymore. Started doing my own thing, and he didn't like that. What would Shoto have to do with this? Let's just sit and talk proper. Kid! Keigo cried as Toya shot up instinctively, spotting his youngest brother standing in the doorway with fire splitting the half of his left side and frost crawling over his right side, his breath uneven. Shoto was hunched over with his hands gripping his knees for dear life as Fumi gasped. Is he using his fire? Sho? Toya said gently. It's me, Toya, remember? What's... Shoto took a step back every time Toya took one forward. His quirk was finally fading out as his body stood limply. What's wrong with him? Toya whispered over his shoulder, as his other siblings still wore expressions of disbelief, which, for obvious reasons, he can't blame him for. Shoto's been a little weird, is all Fumi said awkwardly, but Natsu seemed to have other words. Who fucking knows? Something's been wrong with him ever since Mom tossed boiling water on his face. And, Natsuo! Toya shouted. Don't say something like that. Sho, stop! The white and red boy face crumpled as tears began to fall suddenly, his nose going pink and the bottom of his lip quivering, breathing still violently rapid. Before anyone can get a word out, Shoto turned on his heels and took off down the hallway, Recovery Girl calling after him as Toya was conflicted. Why would you say something like that to him? Toya said softly, trying to not let his anger and frustration show. He's still a kid. I. He stopped and rubbed his face with his hands. No, one thing at a time. Okay. I just. Where should I start? Fumi slowly took a seat and looked at her hands, wiping her face against her shoulders as she sighed. Start with the reason why you left. Please. Why did you leave? Toya immediately pounded the guilt down growing in his gut and nodded. Right, I'll tell you. Good evening.
Shota's fist was already balling at his sides while a female copy of Bakugo stood in the door with a confused expression. Ah, hello. Aren't you Katsuki's teachers? Sensing the stress from his husband, Hazashi took a step forward and held out his hand. Yepers, Hazashi Yamada, this is Nemure Kayama and Shota Aizawa. It's lovely to meet you, ma'am. The woman shook his hand in response. Right, I'm Mitsuki Bakugo, and my husband Matsuru just inside, so come in. Shota stepped through the doorway and letting his eyes quickly assess his surroundings on instinct. The hallway was clean with shoes lined up perfectly. Coats and sweaters hung on the hooks and soft music coming from the kitchen. His black eyes moved to the large wall of pictures. Nearly all consist of Bakugo standing in some sort of award, smile fading as he grew older and older, replaced with a snarl of some sort. We just prepared dinner, and although I'm not sure if we have enough for everyone, I'm sure Katsuki can whip up some extra. Mitsuki smiled as she waited for the three heroes to remove their shoes and jackets. I think we're having extra spicy curry tonight. Nimri raised her eyebrow. Your son cooks dinner for the family? Mitsuki shrugged. Meh, not every night. He cooks when he's stressed, and he kinda came home with some ingredients. The house smelled like spices of all sorts. Shota walked at the back of the crowd, a picture of a familiar green-headed kid hanging above the fireplace in a common area. The two kids were hugging each other with huge smiles, the blonde with Mitsuki and the brown-haired man behind him, the other with the green-haired woman that looks eerily like Izuku. That must be Inko. Shota's eyes moved back to small Izuku, his face full and pink and happy. Freckles splashed across his face, his eyes so bright that he could probably light up a dark room. What's gone so wrong? What has the world done to Izuku Midoriya? Before he could be caught staring, Shota followed the group into the kitchen where the man with brown hair looking up curiously from the table, introducing himself as Matsuru. But Shota didn't care about that because instead he made dead eye contact with his student, the boy freezing while working on his rice, one earbud slowly falling out of one of his ears. Bakugo! Hazashi called out to break the awkward silence. Hey kiddo, what the fuck is going on? The blonde spat right back, removing his second earbud and placing his phone on the countertop, eyes darting from adult to adult. Shota thinned his eyes and allowed himself to take a seat at the table without an invitation. Nothing to worry about. A lie, of course. Shota watched Bakugo's eyes flicker over to the exit of the kitchen for a split second, but Nuri must have caught that as well. She leaned in the doorway. It smells delicious, Bakugo. I never would have guessed that you're a good chef. I'm good at everything, he grunted while plugging in his earbuds. The best. The silence was awkward, as even Hazashi couldn't fill it with casual conversation. Mitsuki rambled about God knows what. Shota kept his eyes on Bakugo the entire time, not bothering to avert his gaze when the kid would accidentally turn around and make eye contact again. Now, Mitsuki huffed nervously, is there a reason why you all stopped by here? Don't get me wrong, it's lovely meeting you all, but your son must not be the conversing type at home either. Shota interrupted. Mitsuki and Matsuru looked at one another as Bakugo stiffened again, while he had previously been filling several bowls with his meal. Um, Mitsuki chuckled nervously. No, I suppose not. The brat doesn't really like to share stuff with us. He got a therapist. Shut up, hag. Bakugo tossed his earbuds to the side. Go ahead and tell my whole fucking life story while you're at it. Watch your fucking mouth, Katsuki Bakugo. Be polite in front of your teachers. Ugh, shut up. Shota cleared his throat as the food was nearly thrown on the table by Bakugo. The kid was visibly sweating more than usual. Shota wondered if it was because of the heat in the kitchen or the kid's thoughts. Bakugo took his own bowl and turned for the doorway. I'll be in my room. Mitsuki stood up and grabbed the back of his shirt. I don't think so. Sit down and play nice. With smoke building around his hands, Bakugo sat down between Hazashi and his mother, loudly swearing under his breath as he shoved a spoonful of curry into his mouth. That's a nice picture above your fireplace, Shota drawled slowly, watching for his reactions through his eyelids. Oh, yes. Mitsuki's expression softened. It's Inko and little Uzu. Family friends. You know how it is. Hazashi hummed. I suppose so. Inko passed away several months back, Matsure explained quietly. Villain attack. And Izuku, well... Mitsuki nodded. It's suspected he took his own life, but sometimes I just can't believe it. He was such a happy kid for all his life, smiling at me whenever we met on the street or when we came to visit. It doesn't make sense that he would give up so soon. It sounds odd, I know, but I have a feeling, well, he's not dead. Resourceful kid, that one is. Shota stored that information for later and he looked at Bakugo. The kid was no longer eating, instead staring at his curry with wide eyes, scorch marks beginning to form underneath his hands on the table. I actually met Izuku the day of the accident, Hazashi said calmly. And although I didn't know his relation at the time, I do know that the green-haired kid was him beyond a shadow of a doubt. Mitsuki leaned over the table. Seriously? Where'd he go? Just ran off, Shota interrupted as he paused while leaning back in his chair. It was time. Excuse his bluntness, but he didn't have much patience left to spare. Now he lives at my house. Mitsuki and Matsuru stared at Shota like he'd grown a third eye out of the blue. The woman laughed anxiously. Sorry, I think I misheard you there. No, Shota grunted. Izuku Midoriya lives in my house. Months ago, a new vigilante by the name of Chaos, who often ran into my patrol routes, joined the scene. They were quite silent into their work, leaving little destruction and mess behind. Hazashi here was quite disturbed about the child he met at the scene with the incident you referred to, so I promised to keep an eye out. I became more observant. I was trying to slowly gain trust of Chaos. Mitsuki was listening to every word as Matsuru's eyes were knitted together, trying to process the information offered. Think of them as a feral cat. Even with food, they wouldn't approach me with earnest. Slowly but surely, I got there, and although I couldn't tell who the vigilante was, I knew it was a child. There were two more, Morphine and Blaze, in which trust was becoming strong. I couldn't hold on to Chaos, even when I learned his name. He was fast and slippery, but after USJ, where my little vigilantes had followed me, Chaos couldn't escape again because he was risking his life for my students. A breath. So now I got him. You know, Izuku Midoriya, right? Is this supposed to be a dumb fucking riddle or something? Because it's not funny, Mitsuki said dangerously. I had buried my best friend and couldn't even locate her son's body for the funeral. So spit out whatever you're trying to say. A breath. I think you understand, and you said you were doubtful of his death, Shota said calmly. Izuku lives with me now. He has for a couple weeks since he woke up from his coma. And he was never missing. He was out on the streets being a vigilante of all things. A good one, too. Obviously, with this being a private case, I couldn't easily contact you all, although we had your family on file. Mitski covered her face as her shoulders shook. Are you telling me that he's okay? He's not okay, Shota said sternly. But if you ask me if he's alive, yes. But tell me, Bakugo, what is your relationship with Izuku? The boy stiffened as his eyes suspiciously red, refusing to respond. It's alright, Cat, Matsure comforted. You can talk about Izuku now. He's alive. Isn't it good news? With no response, Mitsuki spoke in disbelief. Izuku and Kat are best friends. I mean, I guess the two grew apart since they didn't really have sleepovers as they got older. But they were in the same class all through middle school. I always appreciated Izuku for putting up with our little shit. I know he can be a lot. Shota rubbed his chin. It was clear from him the older Bakugos had been left in the dark about Bakugo's life outside of their home. He couldn't judge them for that. He was still learning the first things about taking care of kids. Hazashi briefly explained the deal with vigilantes as Shota spoke again. We tried bringing Izuku into class yesterday. I think you need to speak to your son. I don't trust myself to be able to properly include myself into this conversation yet. I could easily get too upset to understand. Mitsuki frowned. What? Can we see him? What's going on? Izuku is really important to me, Shota said bluntly. His leg vibrated up and down. I want to protect him. Now that I'm somewhere aware of what really happened in his past, I can't promise I won't lose it with your kid. I don't want to make any rash decisions. I don't want to ruin someone's future. So after the three of you have a long needed talk, contact me please. I wish to have a proper conversation about this topic. Shota slid his simple hero card across the table with only his hero name and work number. Mitsuki picked it up with shaking hands. I'm confused. Bring Izuku over to us. I want to see him. Hazashi stopped Shota from answering and did so himself. Izuku is unable to see anyone at the moment except for specified on the contract. He's not in the right frame of mind. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. The kid isn't an inconvenience, Hazashi, Shota growled. He's fucking traumatized and he's been suppressing it all for years. It's really bad. He stood without even touching his food. That's all I have to say at the moment. Bakugo? The boy refused to look up, pushing his food around as Shota continued. I'm disappointed in you, and pissed if we're being honest. But I suppose my views are currently biased. Take this opportunity to confess, and maybe Izuku will benefit. I don't have to confess shit, Bakugo snapped. It's not my fault the quirkless nerd had been weak all his life. You don't mean that. Shota spoke passively. And if you do, you and I will have a whole other problem. You have potential, Bakugo, but I can't help you if you're not willing to grow as well. I expect the full truth by the end of the week, because Izuku can't even think about it before spiraling out of control. I think you fail to understand who he really is. Bakugo rolled his eyes, and Shota could tell he was anxious, but wouldn't admit it. The blonde looked to the side. Fuck off. Mitsuki and Matsuru were too distracted to scold their son, so Shota turned to his other friends followed. Don't make things worse, Bakugo, because it's not just you that's affected by your actions. Izuku, never mind, don't be a coward. The house was silent as the three heroes exited once more. Nemuri speaking quietly. You were being a bit harsh on the kid, Sho. No, the kid has been babied for too long, and I'm not playing into that shit. You didn't have to see Izuku, hear what he said, repeating things he's been told in the past. Don't tell me what's too harsh, Nemuri, because Bakugo isn't a victim. He's not. He's been hurt, but not the victim. Shoto was kind to Bakugo in his opinion. Izuku said things Shoto would never want to hear again. Not from him, not from anyone. Shoto just wanted to protect his kids. That's all. But does Bakugo count as a kid that needs protecting as well? All right. We're done. Yay. Okay, guys. So that is it. So if you want to see more, you just have to be patient with me. I'm still trying to get back on my feet with everything and try to get back in the habit of editing. Because editing takes the longest, to be honest. But if you like what I'm doing, you know what to do.